Okay, so sort of a hiatus. We had a few people asking about when the podcast is going to start going again. I guess now is the answer. And it's easy to say why we are struggling to get podcasts done. And I think it's well, you know what it is. You know what our problem is. We don't like asking for help.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
probably
I,
pretty
I
good.
I think that's not just specific to Ace. I'm talking like you and I as personalities. We don't
Yeah.
ask for help. And I think that goes into our current issue, which is staffing.
Well, we'd rather just do it ourselves than try to get somebody else to do it.
Yeah. So the backstory is I don't know when. We won't say his name. Um, we'll use a fake name. Doug. We'll call him Doug. Doug left. Um, Doug was a rear load driver, side load driver, and not a lot. It's not like we got negative things to say about his time at Ace. The last week was a little sketch.
Yeah. It
I
was a
don't-
really weird 2-week notice.
2 week, 1 week, a day.
Yeah. But it was all cool. I mean, he texted me. He told me that he was leaving, and he was trying to relocate to get closer to some family of his, which was like completely fine. It was just a little rocky exit, I would call it.
Rocky.
But moral of the story is we went down the guy that gave us like quite a bit of breathing room to be able to podcast and
yeah, well, that was the thing.
do more of this content side of it.
Yeah, that's what. I mean, we kind of knew that was a factor where it's like him being able to run routes made it possible for us to do other things.
That's why I went on vacation a couple times.
Yeah,
Like I knew we were staffed.
Yeah,
Everyone's like, "Why are you going out of town so much?" It's like because I know what happens when
yeah.
we're not fully staffed.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I had that crass joke about it. It was an inside joke about how he left. Do I share it here? Do you want?
We don't need to.
You don't need that kind of crass. Okay, maybe if someone DMs me, if they can find me, I'll tell them what it was. But so he gave you 2 weeks notice. It turned into 1 week's notice, and then it turned into
1 day notice.
1 day morning day,
Yeah.
where it's just like, you know what, like maybe I don't want to do this, and certainly that reflected in some actions.
Well, it really reminded me of like we made so much progress. We got so far forward on like getting really good at like
Yeah.
being efficient, picking everything
Yeah.
up. We just really like minimized the number of like problems we were dealing with on a daily basis.
Right.
And then when he left, it like all flooded for like a couple
Yeah.
weeks. Just the adversity of like getting routes done, and it's like, man, it used to be
Yeah.
like this a lot more.
Yeah, like there's like problems and there's projects. And there's a lot of problems solved. Maybe a few smaller ones that would come up as far as like how many phone calls were generated, cuz I'm not we should almost have Casey here for this cuz he was the one fielding phone calls. And there was definitely some instances where Doug generated a couple phone calls and you know there's something about like a cart being put in a puddle that generated a angry customer call. But when I first heard that story, we were all sitting in a group meeting, and I kind of said, I get it. I'm not saying I justify it. I just say I get it. I understand how you take things personal. And you do those small actions to get.
Well, I mean, like if I like consistently have like bad placement, like I'll get mad and I'll like the cart goes in the middle of their driveway so they can't get in or out of their driveway.
Yeah, it's the subtle things. And I've even made a post, like a reel. Maybe it was just a short, not a video. But it was like a little advice to other garbage men where it's like, don't take it personal. Because there's so many like micro moments or micro decisions that customers do that compounded over weeks. If it's the same place, you're like, these people are like personally attacking me. Because I stickered the can, I tagged it, I've asked nicely, and there's no compliance. So then you start doing this little passive aggressive back.
Because you're like, there's no way this person can be this oblivious.
Yeah.
Like, can you really put a cart backwards behind a mailbox and not understand that there's a robotic garbage truck coming to grab this? And like your mailbox is going to be like torn out of the ground.
Yeah.
If the driver doesn't get out and like correctly place your can for you.
Yep. or
I think people are that oblivious.
it is, and that's why I was saying don't take it personal. So when
Hard not to, though.
yeah, I totally agree because there's things I still take personally. I mean, even this last week, there's an instance where I left trash like outside the cart. That was trash. Deliberately, the customer put trash on the ground multiple weeks in a row, and eventually I was like, I'm not taking it.
Yeah.
Like I've asked nicely with how to place it, they don't comply.
You know what's expensive is when there's trash outside the cart and
Yeah.
it would fit inside the cart.
Yes,
Like, that's when it gets expensive.
that's
for
when it
me.
gets personal.
Like, when the cart's jam full and they, like, couldn't fit a bag or two in it, I'm,
Yeah.
like, super nice. I'm like, man, at least they, like,
Yeah.
used their container, filled it up.
yeah,
But if there's a half-full container and then
Yeah.
they had the choice of, like, do I just fling this on the ground or do I,
Yeah.
like, correctly put it in the cart like a
Yeah.
normal, civilized member
Right.
of society?
so
That gets expensive.
right. Well, the way I see it is like, and this is how you can inadvertently take it personal, is there's a second and a half for the person, not even a second and a half, for them to open the lid, throw it in. Not even open the lid all the way. Just crack it, toss it, drop it again. Second and a half, most. But it's like the customer is essentially saying, my time's so valuable, I can't give that second and a half, but I need you to give me that extra 60 seconds to pull the brake, get out, pick it up, put it in. Like, I know it's not what they're saying, but it's being inferred, and that's how you can interpret it like a personal thing, where it's like your $400,000 truck needs to come to a full stop.
Yeah, I don't think they understand that. I
They
think they're
don't.
just-
No,
I
no,
think
no,
they're
they
just
don't.
Flinging bags out.
But going back to what I'm saying, when Doug puts a customer's cart in the puddle, and it's like, I get it.
yeah.
Like, I understand how it happens. It doesn't justify it because it's probably like,
Well, the backstory to that is I think there's a customer that like had a cart really close to a pole,
yeah,
like week after week.
Yeah.
And he made notes, he tagged it. And
Yeah.
then 1 week, like nothing like gets you more aggravated than like a big rain and you got to go like just deal with like everything that goes along with that.
yeah,
And he came up to that stop. It was next to the pole. So he grabbed this cart and then
puts it in the water.
well, yeah, I don't know what the deal is. It's like in an alley, so they got this huge area that like floods with like,
Yeah.
not that much rain.
Yeah.
So it was flooded. So he grabbed the cart and he like backed up 20 feet and
Ah,
like just put it
That's-
right in the middle of the puddle.
That's
And
deliberate.
not to his knowledge, but every driver should know you're always being recorded. So the gal had a Ring camera. So she texted in the Ring camera of like what he did.
Oh,
And we all watched it. We're like, wow, that's pretty bad.
well, because it's so like you
It's so obvious what he's doing.
exactly to go in reverse. Like it's
Yeah.
one thing when it like hangs on the fingers and you release it, spins around and it's somewhere else. But
Yeah, the truck never like reverses to set down again.
anyway, so Doug, I gave him a little bit of grace, and we can almost approach that topic as far as like giving employees too much grace or like micromanaging. Long story short, we're short staffed. We're not like we're kind of short staffed. We're in that limbo period where do we train someone to alleviate some of our hours on the route, or do we just say screw it, we'll do it ourselves?
There's nothing worse than training.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than training.
Yeah, and that was kind of like I listed all these questions about staff. Oh, I'll edit that out. I listed all these questions that I wanted to discuss about staffing, but a lot of it ties down to personality. Like you and I are probably of the mindset where training is awful, because it's not just the training, but it's also the procuring, like getting people in the door and getting them in the truck.
Oh yeah, so training is down the list. Like first you got to like
Yeah.
screen, filter.
Yeah. All right. So let's go.
But that's like easy cuz that only takes like that doesn't take a whole lot of time. But like when you commit to a person that you think can potentially do the job
yeah.
and then you like start riding around with them, that's when it's bad. And then the other thing is like the more desperate you are for somebody,
Yeah.
the more like some of these people walk in the door and you're like, maybe they could do it.
Yeah.
Maybe they could do it. And
Yeah.
the problem is you gotta really use some discretion
Yeah.
and not give those people a shot that can't do it, that you're like giving them a
Yeah.
shot because you're really desperate, and it's like this is just gonna waste everyone's time.
This is a perfect analogy. I always talk in analogies. I would spend a lot of time being single just because it's like, I don't know, starting relationships is tricky. Staying in them can be tricky. It's always a lot of demand, and me being
It's an investment.
it is an investment, and like I am perfectly comfortable. Almost prefer social isolation. Like me in a basement, editing or playing games is like I can do that for a week, not talking to people, and the people are like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Totally fine." It drives people. Some people worry about me, but I'm married with kids, so that doesn't happen often. But what I would tell people is, you almost need to be perfectly comfortable in happiness alone, and then you go get a relationship. That's when you can exercise discrimination. So when you're hiring, it's almost like you want to be able to run routes comfortably and confidently and be like, you know what? We don't need somebody, but maybe we're ready to be.
Well, okay, so that's my argument in hindsight. Like, we probably should have been hiring another person that whole time. We were,
Yeah.
like, in our eyes, fully staffed.
Yeah,
Because, one, you never know when something's going to happen to anyone.
sure.
And then, two, when you're fully staffed, you have a lot more leverage than when you're understaffed. When you're understaffed,
yeah.
to your point, is like when you're probably gonna like make poorer decisions onto like who could join
comes
the
in.
staff.
Exactly.
And I've told you guys, it's like, honestly, I will hold out until we get a good candidate.
Exactly.
Because if we like rush it, get a bad candidate that
Yep.
only lasts 6 months, that really only causes us problems.
Dude.
Like
yeah.
waiting a couple more months for the better one to come in the door that could last a couple years is a no-brainer. But again, it's that short-term pain.
It's like I said, it's a perfect analogy, because then you got a friend that is always wanting to be in serial relationships back to back, and then he wonders like, oh, why did I ever get in a relationship with that person? It's like, because you're desperate. And
Yep.
it's like when you're hiring, why do we ever hire that person? It's because you're desperate. Yeah, and I guess like going from there. So when you kind of enter into the mindset where it's like you're looking for someone, one of the questions I posted or was writing out for discussion is like, where's the best place to source? I don't know. Well, where to source them and what do you look for as far as criteria? Because one of your best hires with Casey, he didn't have a CDL, and he was not doing anything related to like driving trucks or material
Right,
management.
yeah. I think with Casey, though, is I knew Casey growing up.
Oh, okay. Maybe I
Yes.
didn't know that. I guess I didn't know that. I thought
I went to school with Casey. Casey and I,
Okay.
we've known each other for a long time.
Okay.
But I knew, so like he kind of wanted to come on board before
Yeah.
he did. So he asked me like a year or two prior to him
Yeah.
actually coming on board. And I was like, honestly, I don't think you'd like the job, because that's when it still was pretty rocky.
Yeah.
So like once it got better, I brought him in when like we had cleaned it up enough to where I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not embarrassed of this job anymore.
Still
Like,
rear load.
it was still rear load, but it was like a little less embarrassing. Like,
Gotcha.
and it was like, I think it's good enough to where like he probably could see like that it's going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
But it's good enough to where he'd probably stick with it, which it
Right.
was, and that worked out well. But again, that was just kind of finding somebody that like probably had more potential than what they were doing. And it's
Yeah.
like, come over here. I get it's like going to be a little rocky at the start, but we'll get it in a better place, which we did.
What attributes did he have that stuck out though? Because he wasn't driving a truck. He was.
Oh, so the thing with Casey, like the best thing about him is he's got customer service skills. Like, he's
Gotcha.
patient, and he's really good with communicating with people.
Right.
And I saw that at the job he was at, where I kind of saw him, and I was like, oh, this.
Because he was at a home department.
Yeah, he was like at a
or,
department store doing customer service
yeah.
with people, and like those places have strict policy, and you have to. The customer's always right kind of a place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I saw him like dealing with customers, and I'm like,
That's what you need.
this is talent.
Did you have the idea you're gonna get him into the office eventually, or 'cause you were looking for a driver at the time?
I was looking for a driver. Well, let's put it this way. I just knew he was capable of doing a lot more
Right.
than
What he was doing then?
what he was doing then. And again, if anybody's like got a good attitude and they're trainable, they can morph into like what you need.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, because then related to that is the question of like, where do you start to like search? Because the common one is you
Well,
post.
anybody good already has a job.
Yeah. Yeah, well that was one of the so when I wrote out this question, I broke it down into 3 areas. So when you are trying to source a new driver, do you put out ads? Do you ask existing employees to find somebody? Or do you try to poach one from another business? Like you feasibly
Well, I
poach
mean,
them.
poaching is like how the majority of like good talent probably moves around.
Yeah, I
And the
think
thing
so.
about poaching is you get a pay raise typically when you jump ship.
Yeah, I've always told people that I've been poached twice from garbage companies, and every time I got a significant pay raise was when I got poached.
Right.
Because you can ask your management, "Hey, I need more money," and they'll give you this hem and haw. The bigger corporate,
And then once you leave, they're like, "Oh, we probably should just give him more money."
it would have been worth it.
Because now it's going
Yeah.
to be really expensive to find a
Yeah.
replacement.
Oh God, because it was always a. Oh, this was like when I was at that larger corporate company, one of the big 3 national ones or international. Um, the ops manager would say, "Oh, we need to find somebody. We need to get staffed." And I was like, "Yeah, you guys keep talking about this. Like you want better drivers." And the expression I would say is like, if you don't, why did the Yankees win the World Series? Like what, like late '90s or early 2000s? It's like if you want the Yankees, you got to buy the Yankees, and you're not going to do that when you have this policy of like, oh, we can give people like a 15 to 30 cent raise. And if you're a higher tier driver, we'll give you the 30 to 35 cent raise. It's like, this is ridiculous because you got these guys milking the clock that we can openly say they're worthless. I know you're not supposed to, and it creates an HR fiasco, but we know they're absolute dog piss drivers because like they'll just drag their feet as long as possible to do the minimum amount of work.
How long do you think I would have lasted at one of those places?
Oh my God, how desperate! Well, in this hypothetical scenario, how desperate are you?
I just wanted. I would have just not done it.
Yeah, I like if you're single and you got like some savings, a week, maybe, like just to get a glimpse and be like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. If you're married, and
I need a performance-based environment.
yeah, well, it's just.
I don't understand how those places stay staffed and get everything done and like.
Well, they got a whole infrastructure of just constantly.
But think how expensive that is. Like, how do you then compete on price?
I don't know.
I mean, they really
Dude,
don't compete on price.
I do not know. Like they got that whole structure built out where a recruiting office is just based somewhere in the country, calling people constantly, trying to get them in to do interviews. And I think it's just keep cycling people through and see what sticks. And that's ridiculously expensive because you got to pay the recruiter, and then there's a whole process of recruiting people. And like a real testament to that is I drove in and out of that place because we would take recycle back, to my former employer. We would take a recycling. They had the drop off for recycling, and I was driving out of that location, and they had like a $10,000 sign-on bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I went there, it was never taken down.
Well, I told you about the staffing agency, right?
Well, which one?
There's a local staffing agency that they call us every once in a while, but they called us and said, hey, are you guys short-staffed? We got a potential guy with direct work experience. And usually the staffing agency just talks to like our office, and I mean, I've really never been in contact with them, but since they had like this potential lead, I was like, okay, I'll call them. So I called them up, come to find out this guy doesn't even have a CDL, and then we kind of like, it's kind of like, well, I guess that doesn't really work. You don't really have a candidate. And then they told me the fee structure, and they said, well, how much are you planning on paying your driver? And I was like, well, I don't know. We'd probably start around like $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
So then the headhunter fee that they wanted was 25% of a year's salary up front, and then they guarantee him for 30 days.
Gross.
So they want $15,000
What?
if they find a CDL driver that would come on our staff, and they would guarantee him for 30 days.
Oh.
I told that to somebody, and they're like, okay, you know what they do with that $15,000? They tell the guy, hey, we'll give you $5,000 if you stay there for 30 days.
Yeah.
And then we're going to keep the other 10.
Yeah. Gross. Yeah, that's not helpful. Because it's like, all right, you bring this guy on for 30 days, he wrecks something. Who pays for that?
Yeah,
I know the answer.
It just seemed egregious.
Yeah, I know the answer. It's like it's all risk, no reward for them.
I mean, they're like in business. People are paying that.
I know they are. It's just I don't like it.
Yeah.
I can express my opinion, even if they're wrong.
They, I don't know what their bread and butter for staffing is, but I would guess it's not niche driving like what we're looking at.
No, but like I said, it's that I can think of the three scenarios. There's probably more. Do you advertise for it? Do you poach it? Or do you let existing employees refer somebody? And yeah, there's no perfect solution. I think I
I
would
would say networking's probably the most powerful way to find
networking's the
somebody.
best one. Yeah. Well, currently the two guys you have now, me and Casey, were poached.
Yeah,
You know,
in the sense of that you guys were working somewhere else.
we were
You
working
directly
somewhere else.
working
Yeah,
Casey
but
indirectly.
networking was involved because you knew Nate and Nate knew me, and Nate's
Yep.
like, talk to this person. And I didn't come over here to interview for a job. I initially came to you to explain, like, oh, here's what you can and cannot do with automated trucks. Because your perception of automation was 100% like 10 out of 10 cart compliance or it won't work. And it's like, nah, like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of wiggle room. And anyway, people can watch our content and see what that's like.
So did you know how much value you had to me
No.
more than I knew what you
No,
had?
it was
Like
asymmetrical.
who knew there was because there was a ton of value there.
Yeah.
Who knew there was more value?
You do. You
Because
do.
I think I don't know if I really appreciated it.
No, I would say in retrospect I would have said it's asymmetrical. Where
Remember
you,
the meme you sent me where it was like you were like buy a side load,
yeah.
or it was like buy a side load, drive a side load yourself, and then hire somebody to drive your side
Oh,
load.
the Enlightenment meme.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if I still have that. Yeah, that's actually really good.
He sent that to me like the first week on the job.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I'm funny. But
I liked it.
yeah. But no, I would have said it's asymmetrical, where you probably knew more than I did, and Nate probably knew most, as far as like putting those two pieces together.
Yeah, he knew getting a side load that the next thing I needed was a driver.
Yeah.
And I'd be foolish not to do it. But again,
Yeah.
I'm one of these guys, like, I'd just do it myself as opposed to, like, try to
Yeah.
find someone to do it,
Yeah.
not knowing how much easier it is just to, like,
Yeah.
find somebody with direct work experience that knows how to set that up and just
Yeah.
have them do it for you,
Yeah. In a podcast,
which was a big learning curve.
yeah, in a podcast would be incomplete if I didn't make a reference to hay. It's like when I bought the self-propelled bale wagons. I'm like, oh yeah, it's simple, super simple. You know, it's self-propelled. It makes sense how it's supposed to work, and then you watch someone else use it, and you're like, Jesus,
Yeah.
like this is like it's a nice machine, but it's going at maybe 50% capacity, and it's so handicapped that you might as well go get the hay racks back out and start packing hay racks. Because if you don't have an operator, you don't have the machine.
Well, that's like the premise behind a lot of your videos. Like, yeah, they're just kind of like these goofy videos of you, like, you know, getting a machine to do things like the factory probably doesn't want you
Yeah.
to do with it.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, so many guys can watch those videos and then it just like clicks.
Yeah.
Like I only had to ride around with you for like a week, maybe
Yeah.
a week and a half, and I watched you with the arm kind of like make a lot of situations work that shouldn't have like worked.
Yeah.
Because really the customer should just be correctly set out.
Yes.
But during a transition period, you're not going to have that.
Yeah.
But just all those videos you've made, anybody can go watch those, and it just like clicks pretty fast. Like, oh, that's what you do.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Like,
Yeah. And then I'm
'cause
always
I knew none of that until you came over.
Yeah.
I was oblivious. I was like, oh, if it's not correctly set out, it doesn't work.
And there's stuff I didn't even know until I was forced to learn it. I'm gonna pause. Does that still say start recording? It started. Oh, let's keep. We got the audio going though. But the thing I had to learn was the Bridgeport body I was familiar with, but then we got that new way, and there's things that I didn't even know because it was transitioning. But then again, there's that contract town with the other company that we had never seen side load. But they were coached really well. And the contract, you can set the rules pretty aggressively
Yeah.
as far as like, this is exactly how it's going to be set out or it doesn't get serviced.
Contract isn't you had every house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's easy too, because then
Yeah.
everybody's on the same page.
Yep. Yeah. And your area, and I was skeptical coming over because Columbus always had the reputation of like being a little wild. And you had a competitor that enabled like, yeah, just do whatever you want. You want it up by the house? You want it kind of by the mailbox? Do you want it behind a car, backwards? Or do you not even want a car? Just throw piles on the ground. All that's okay. And it's like, that's not good.
Yeah, so people didn't have a lot of direction. There
Yeah.
was like a correct way to do it.
Yeah. So it just creates a lot of chaos. So I was even learning stuff on the go as well, but I had a lot of prior knowledge, which, having that prior knowledge and experience and then putting it into an environment where you got to improvise makes it a lot easier than starting from scratch, where it's like someone that's never driven side load. But yeah, but then we got that new way, and I discovered a whole new realm of possibility as far as what you could do with an arm that's got more variable control,
Right.
and that freed stuff up. But back to the idea of staffing, you found someone, you had Casey, you had a couple other guys that were doing rear load, some didn't have CDL, and then I came over, and now it's just Casey and I left over. Like, people have come and gone and cycled out, and
Yeah.
we're getting stuff done. And like, it's not totally uncomfortable, but it would be a little bit more comfortable with one or two people.
Well, I think every garbage company knows being short-staffed is like that's very typical.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's
Yeah.
everyone in garbage knows what being short-staffed is.
Yeah.
And is like, yeah, it's not comfortable, but it's not like anything we haven't done before.
No. Yeah. And like, if we lost someone now, it'd be a real problem.
Well, that's like the biggest thing to me is like the risk day to day.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple days where all three of us have to show up. If somebody doesn't show up, then we got a big problem.
Big problem.
So that's where I'm almost to the point, like, we probably need to find a guy at all costs. Meaning, like, I don't know if it's the pay scale. I don't know. Like, I don't know what exactly, like, you start tweaking. But at some point, you just got to find somebody for the continuity of the service.
Well, the short-term solution we've had right now is can bring it down to 4 days a week. So there's no Friday. So even if someone was gone where you need all three,
Yep.
you got that float day to back up, which is good.
Well, and that happened because we've gained like compliance.
Yep.
So over the past couple of years, like, we started with like 400, 500 stop routes.
Yep.
A lot of extras, a lot of bad placement.
Yep.
Just every week that goes by, you just work to like get better and better. And we've got our routes now to where they're like they're in the upper bounds of efficiency, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting out less now than ever before. And like Friday, we had one route that went out. It did like 400 or 500 stops.
Mm-hmm.
We're to the point now, Monday through Thursday, where we can take those 400 or 500 stops and absorb them pretty easy.
Yeah.
So we just axed Friday, Monday through Thursday, call it 410s.
Yep.
Which to me, that's like an ideal work schedule for like somebody looking to get 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
That like enjoys a long weekend.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, and I don't know if I really spent a lot of time thinking about the answer, but like 10 years ago, if you told me, hey, there's 4 10-hour days at 60 to 70,000 a year, depending on experience and ability and efficiency, skill, I would have been like, that is like the perfect gig. So it should be super simple to get somebody. But I don't know if that's, I think reality, we might discover it's not as easy as we hope. Like, 410s, like a 3-day weekend every week. Like, dude, it should be a shoo-in for some people. But I don't know. There's that one guy. We've, both seen him. I won't say where, but I was like, just go poach him. I bet, like, he probably doesn't have a CDL, but we both saw him work, and it's like, dude, he could probably hang.
Yeah.
Like, he just looks like he had the grit to, like, once you got him through the train phase, he's going to have the work ethic and grit to make a great driver.
Well, garbage is like, it's not a glamorous job.
No. But I don't think
it's got some things that are good about it.
Yeah.
But the problem is you got to get over the hump. Like, you got to, like, your first day on a garbage truck, I would think the majority of people are like, I don't want anything to do with this.
That happens.
But it's like, if you give it like a couple weeks, you kind of like figure it out. Like, it's kind of like an instrument, like a side load, a rear load.
Mm-hmm.
When you first start, it's really rocky. You know, you don't have rhythm, so things take longer.
Yeah.
You have more issues, you have more stuff spilling. Like you have a lot of adversity, but once you kind of get the hang of it, once you get in rhythm,
Yeah.
pretty soon you figure out, okay, this is a pretty you know, there's two stages of thinking. Like this is pretty motorless as far as like what it takes. Like
Easiest.
I'm kind of out in la la land, just like
Yeah.
running a route.
Easiest hard job out there.
Easiest hard job, but you have to get over that hump.
And I've said that in a reel before where I'm like, listen, if you ever take a job as a garbage man, your first 3 months are going to be awful. And you're going to be tired because you're getting up early every morning. And then when you're off the route, you're exhausted. And it's not because you're physically exhausted, you're just mentally wiped. Because if there's.
You don't know the routes, you don't know the stops.
If
Like
someone puts a stack, and granted we're on tablets now, but back in the day, if it was a stack of paper that was like all addresses that like you need to get to all of these today, and you're like, there's like 600 or 700 homes on this, like that's daunting.
yeah, it seems unattainable.
Yeah, and it's like no, it's actually a lot easier than you think if you kind of chunk it into neighborhoods, and you just once you understand the rules of like you're either going straight or making a right hand turn, maybe the occasional left, and you work one area and then you work another. You break it down, and after 3 months, it's flow.
Yeah. Well, I would describe too, like there's two parts to the job. There's like the truck,
Yep.
which you need a CDL to run and drive.
Yep.
And then there's this whole other component, which is you have this iron packer bolted onto the truck
Yeah.
that has an arm that goes out that you got to do all this collection with. So you got to be savvy with a truck, able to drive a truck around.
Yep.
And then on top of that, the second component, which is run the packer.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of trucking jobs where all you have to do is drive the truck.
Yeah.
So if all you have to do is drive the truck, you look at that and you're like, well, I got to drive a truck and do all this on top of that. Like, man, I think I just want the trucking job.
Yeah. And because there's some garbage companies that will think, oh, this guy's got CDLA, over the road trucker. This will be a real nice, lateral shift. He's already a trucker, so this is going to be super simple. And I've seen truckers try to do the job, and they struggle. And I was training one at another location, and I told him, I don't want you driving the truck. I was like, I'll drive the truck, and I'll pick up the trash. Let's break it down where we just do one thing at a time, and then we'll put it all together. So we're going to start off. I want you to hold the tablet, and I just want you to tell me where you're going. There's a list of addresses, and there's a map. So if you can read a map, and that's one of those small details that people don't really appreciate, where you're constantly doing these like 10th second flashes of your tablet going like, oh, next stop's here. And
Your route's breadcrumbed. Every stop has a pin.
Yep.
You got to
Yep.
look at the pins on a map and then use the map to know your next stop.
Yeah.
Because if you have to look for a couple seconds where your next stop is,
Yeah.
700 stops, that
Yeah.
multiplies out.
And if you do it enough, it takes like 5% of your brain, maybe less. But if you
Well, pretty
never-
soon you just learn every turn.
Yeah.
You know
That
every
too.
turn.
That
You're
too.
not even paying attention
Yeah.
once you get it down.
But if you're a new guy, it like whenever you look at that tablet, it takes 80% of your like cognitive power, and then everything stops moving. And now you're like another 30 seconds behind. And then you do that for 100 stops, and you're like, yeah, dude, we're like an hour and a half behind, and we still got like another 600 stops to go.
And that's why training's awful.
And it's awful. Yeah.
So would you take a driver that like only knows driving down the road and try to make him a driver and let's call it laborer of like,
Yeah,
running
I
the
don't know.
packer, getting out, picking up, or would you rather take a laborer
You don't
that understands like the lifting and the physical component and try to get him to drive?
Golly, I don't know. Like, part of me would almost, if I was doing an interview, like in a pre-interview conversation, I would almost make chit chat about like what kind of video games they play. And if they say it's all Call of Duty, or when they're younger, I used to play a lot of games. If they said all they did was play Call of Duty and yell at people, I'd be like, I don't know if that's our guy, because like it's a pretty low watt game. Whereas there's other games where it's like that requires analysis and skill. Then it's like maybe this could be the guy. Where you're kind of looking at all these different variables and how they affect your score, and your play.
So you're not looking if he's a laborer, if he's a driver. You're going to analyze his video game habits.
I just want to know. I want to know what kind of brain he has. That's what I want to know. Okay.
I think somebody that plays Call of Duty is a perfect candidate because, like, that's a motorless like game.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Once you learn the game and you know, like, like once you learn the maps, once you learn all your guns, like,
I guess so. Well,
that's like garbage. Garbage is motorless once you learn it.
Once you learn it, I'm being swayed.
It's like when we drive around in garbage trucks, we're just on headsets the whole time, like jabbering.
Yeah.
Because like it doesn't take much of your brain to run a garbage truck once you know everything.
No, it doesn't. No, you're swaying me a little bit.
I think somebody that can sit down and play Call of Duty for 10 hours is a perfect candidate for driving around in a garbage truck. Like, wow, you can sit for 10 hours and stare at a screen and just be entertained.
Yeah, and then
perfect.
Yeah, like you recognize when
Do you take breaks? No. Oh, the better.
Perfect. Just always forward, always forward. Yeah, you're on to something there. But like like what their prior history is, I don't know. You're saying laborer?
Do you want to labor? Do you want to make a laborer a driver, or do you want to make a driver a laborer?
God, that's tough. Because I've seen, like I said, driver of what? Like, is this a former Robert's Dairy delivery guy where he's getting out at every?
No, you're trying to get a laborer that's driving. I'm saying just a driver.
I don't know if
like their skill set is just being capable of driving.
I don't know if that's your guy.
Vehicle.
I don't know if that's your guy. I've seen drivers like that were over the road truckers. I don't know if they're conditioned for it because it's like you're still going to be getting out. Like, don't think because like we're assuming this is automated because we're technically looking for someone that can do rear load.
Yeah.
But even if you hire a guy that thinks, oh, I came in here thinking I would never get out of the truck to drive a robotic arm, it's like, no, that's not really reality.
I would say if they can't do rear load one day a week, there's just no way.
Yeah.
Because like you could do rear load one day a week, I can do it. Like that's a barrier to entry. Like, can you do a rear load route once a week?
Yeah, and I haven't
not saying 5 days, once a week.
Yeah, I haven't done rear load for a while, but
rear load's easy.
Yeah, if you gave
me, you just have to be in shape and you have to be able to like get in and out.
If you gave me a truck and a map, even if I haven't seen the route, I'd be like, I think I can figure this out. If you want it done in 7 hours, I'll probably do it in 9 because I'm going to take my time.
Yeah, it'd take you time.
It's going to get
acclimated.
done, though. Yeah, because that stuff's muscle memory. It comes back. So laborer or driver, I would start to lean towards laborer, but I don't know. It depends on the candidate. Well, here's the question I wrote down that I was going to ask you. Do you want a 50-year-old garbage man, with 15, 20 years experience, or do you want a 22-year-old who just got his CDL? We're gonna throw in some ages stuff right there. So if we ever
you're not allowed to do that, but we'll call this hypothetical.
Yeah, hypothetical. So we don't bury ourselves with a future HR issue down the road. Hypothetical scenario. Well, yeah,
I'd probably take an older person with experience because they can do it.
I think so. Yeah.
I think you just get comfortable with routes are going to take longer.
Yeah. That's another one. Whether it's an older or younger guy.
But I would take longer correctly over shorter and fast.
Easily.
I mean, we know what that side of it is.
Yeah, because you're going to generate phone calls. And that always adds more work. If not to the person, then someone else. But yeah, I think I would lean towards the older guy with experience.
So the thing to me about a laborer is a laborer can increase their wage quite a bit by obtaining a CDL.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody with a CDL already knows that they're in that like upper bound of like what they would make picking up garbage because they could just go drive like a truck over the road.
Yeah.
Or not a truck over the road, but drive something, comparable that doesn't have the adversity of, loading other people's filth in like horrible weather conditions.
Yeah, you got to get over that. Yeah, I don't know. Do we still have culturally, do you think I would say the answer is yes, but culturally, do you think people still have this turn your nose at the garbage man?
Oh,
like if you're at a party, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a garbage man. Yeah, I think that's true.
There's always going to be a stigma around like cleaning up other people's filth for sure.
Right. Like online, you'll still see some pockets of like, work is work and people respect it. But I think when it comes down to it, there's still some that have that. What's the word I'm looking, like, treat it as almost like a pejorative. Is that the word I'm looking for? Negative.
Yeah, it's just like it's a low prestige job.
Okay, let's say you take one of your vacations. You're at a fancy place in Colorado or something, and a cute girl is like showing interest. Do you tell her you're a garbage man, or do you tell her I own a garbage company?
So if I'm being like facetious, I say I'm a garbage man.
Nice. Good.
That always gets a good reaction.
You're like, let's test this girl. Let's see what she's made out of.
And then if you say you own a garbage company, that's a whole different conversation.
Isn't it? Yeah. Kind of depends on what your interests are.
But like private equities, like rolling up these like home services. So like owning a garbage company is kind of on the upswing. Like,
sure.
I think a lot of people like recognize it's a pretty,
well,
it's a pretty good subscription service.
We should almost shout out Spencer, because he's kind of he's making the weird shift, and it's generating some Twitter or X traffic. He had a software as a service in some sort of communication, and then he started a garbage company on a whim.
And he's trying to staff too, so that fits him well.
Yeah. We almost should call him and see, like, dude, how's that going? Like, what have you learned?
Oh man.
Oh, because staffing that, and he's in a really hard position because he's not staffing for 5 days a week.
Yeah, he's building a garbage company, so he's, got one full day a week.
I know, that's tough. People...
And then older equipment on top of that.
That's tough, too. Yeah, I mean, it's Texas, so the weather should be fairer. Like, if you're trying to do that now in Nebraska, right as, like, it's starting to get cold, like, it's like I walked out this morning, it's in its 20s. It's like, okay, here we go. Like, this is going to become a normal.
So I've been, it's been like 3 weeks now. We got like texting, obviously.
Yeah.
So I can text like a message and a photo. So you like made the photo like we're hiring.
Yeah.
With like, and I got it all built out. Like,
okay.
Hey, we're hiring. If you or anybody you know like would be interested in this position, please email us. And I got like a little picture of like our garbage truck and like a description of what we're looking for.
It's a good picture.
And I'm like waiting for the perfect day to send it, because I don't want to send it when it's raining. I don't want to send it when it's windy. Like, that's just like, you want to send that on a day when it's like, oh, like today wouldn't be the worst day to have that job. I've been waiting for weeks to send this.
Yeah, because then inevitably you're going to have to tell a lot of people like you're not interested, because you'll probably know right away.
Well, it's just shock and approach. You try to tell as many people as you can that you're hiring, and then,
and then
filter it as it comes in.
And I wonder, those bigger companies, because I'd see them, like I said, this other large company I was at, I would see them just cycle people in and out all the time. They hired a bus driver, older guy, bus driver, wanted to do something else, more hours or something, and he had recently had like a kidney or appendix or something worked on, so he had this massive scar.
Ooh.
And he didn't realize that he'd be doing both side load and rear load. He thought it'd just be sitting in the truck. They even hired a guy with one leg. He had a prosthetic, pulled his pant leg up, and he's like, well, it's a little difficult with this. And it's like, dude, like, why would you not have told us this at the interview? Because he was wearing pants at the time. But yeah, they would hire people where it's like, it's not going to work. Like, you still have to have like a 50-pound capacity. You'll be able to lift 50.
So who does all the training? So they just have these guys. It's a revolving door of people coming in. Who's training?
It's usually they'll have, so the ops manager will hire somebody and do a little bit of training. Then he'll send the guy.
Where do they start? Do they start out like delivering cans, or?
I think they'll have them right along with one of the easier routes that's like longer but easy in town.
Right.
It's like, we're not going to send you
cherry pick the route. Like,
we're not going to send you with the guy that goes like 50 miles north up country roads to service a small town, and then a bunch of farms, and then another small town. When I started there, they said
just the resources though it would take to constantly
so much
be having people coming in and training them.
And I don't know how they fall down that rabbit hole where like that becomes a strategy, because what we're looking at, it's like we can't afford bad employees. We're too small.
What little, or not like what little, So like big companies have an issue because like they got to pay everybody like relative,
Yeah.
like seniority and
Yeah.
like all the like typical factors you would use.
Right.
Like when you're small and efficient, oh, it's pay for performance.
Right.
And like once you get a couple people that can perform and create like that level of efficiency, that's like wow, we're like doing really good. You
Yeah.
can't go back.
Yeah, and that I think that puts us in a tough position because
But your standards are so high then.
we set our standards high because when I was starting here, it's like, okay, we're running stops at 60 to 65 stops an hour. Haven't done all the math and finances behind it, but I know it's not good. 65 stops an hour is not good. And then we start pushing into 70s and 80s, and now we're kind of in the 90s. 90 stops an hour is doable, and it drops a little bit when you have to go to the transfer, but 800 stops in a day is doable. We could do 800 stops. And if we hire somebody, we almost have to accept it's like they're not going to do 800 stops in a day, or they're not going to do 800 stops in like
people that have been side loading for multiple years are doing 800 stops an hour.
Yeah. Like I got a stop that's like, or a day that's 740 stops that I'm finishing by like 145, and it's over a good chunk of town. It's scattered over like my Monday.
Yep.
It's a whole bunch in one area, and then picking up a little extra over in another chunk, and then being done. But if we hired somebody, it's like you're gonna have to accept that guy's finishing that route at 4:00 for the next 6 to 8 months. You think, realistically?
Yeah. Like, but again, like over time, anybody like will get better at it. They'll gain time.
They'll gain time.
They'll gain speed.
And then you got well. That's the other thing is the personalities of these people you hire. Like my person, ours is not too different. Where it's just like we just want to be done. Like we're not interested in like trying to stretch out the clock.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a guy again at a different trash company, and they knew I was kind of incentivized just to get done to go home and do some farm work. But they had guys. I had one guy literally say to me, he's like, "I hate my family. I don't want to go home." I'm like, "I don't want." He's like, So he'll sit in that truck till 5:00. It's sun up to sundown, and then it's like before I go home, I'll stop at the bar, or stop somewhere, or sit in the car for another half hour before he goes in the house. And I'm like, dude, I have never had that.
I had a guy that didn't want to go home that worked for me once, and it was just so weird.
So weird,
like, dude. You got to go home. Like,
yeah,
I'll tell you,
God.
I mean, he doesn't want to leave like
the
building where the garbage trucks are, and it's like, God, how bad is it that you want to like hang out? Like this.
Yeah, because there's times where I'll get out of the truck and be like, I should grease now instead of tomorrow morning. But I'm like, I want to go home, and so I'll go. But and that's the thing is like, it's not just we're talking about where do you source people from. And then once you source them, what criteria do you look for? And then after that, it's like, what are these people's personalities, and how do they match with your personality? Because yours is one of like, I don't want to micromanage, whereas you might have employees that do really, really well when they are micromanaged.
Yeah, that's another key component to like a driver, though. One of the good things about driving a trash truck is you're kind of like responsible for yourself, and you're not going to have much interaction with the layer of management above you.
Right.
If you just go out and do your route correctly.
Yeah.
And like knowing how to do your route correctly is part of that. It's not very difficult.
Yeah.
Some guys can like make a big deal about it and like drive phone calls, but truthfully, a good like route that's pretty well maintained, you don't even have to talk to the office management level.
No.
Like you are kind of your own boss. It's your route. It's your truck. Like, which is a good part of the job to me.
And I mean, well, that's what we'd like to set up. But I feel like there's some places where it's like we're constantly hiring like the bottom dollar employee. We're just going to have to we're going to pack those trucks full of monitoring devices and cameras.
Yeah.
So at any given minute, we can.
So you know another thing about our company, why like it's why it would be like a pretty ideal situation for a driver.
Yeah.
Is because I go out and run all the routes. It's like when the owner goes out and runs all the routes are very well maintained. Like there aren't many bad customers on the routes. Like
Yeah.
when the owner's running the routes, you know you have good routes.
Yeah.
When the owner doesn't run the routes,
They
that's
don't.
when the routes are just bad.
Yeah, this is okay. So way back in another lifetime, I worked at Schwann's, briefly, for maybe like 8 months.
That's the cold package delivery.
Frozen food truck, stopping at homes, talking to
B2C, so you had a truck full of
Yeah.
frozen food, you go sell it house by
But-
house.
They had a pretty good model, and as I don't know what killed that company because it's shifted.
Costco.
Yeah, that or something. But like, there's still farms that would like to have the frozen food truck deliver frozen foods. That and the quality went down. They started changing food,
Oh, I'm sure.
and that didn't help. But anyway, what they had their set up as was the driver would have his routes, and like literally they're his routes, his customers, and there was a commission. So like there was a salary that you got paid weekly, and they would change the pay scale every once in a while. But when I was there, it's like, here's your weekly salary, and then at a certain price point, you get commissions. And the higher you go, the greater percentage that commission. So maybe it's like 3% at this tier, 5% at another tier. I think as high as like maybe 9 or 10% at certain tiers. And that's where you'd have like the guys that really had a balance of customer service, great drivability, and they're salesmen.
Yeah, I would say that's sales more than anything.
Well, that's the thing. Is like,
Because like, what's the driver behind that like operating model? It's like how many sales per hour can we generate?
If this guy wouldn't be interested, I don't think he'd be interested in garbage. But and who knows where he's at now? But the guy that my parents had at their place, they were out of Schuyler, but he lived in Columbus. And that dude, I think he would like be a national leader in some sales. And I think he's one of my customers now, as a trash customer. But he had a like
Just had a knack for sales.
just across the board, good for. But the thing is, I would talk to him like, even like I was at my folks' house when the guy showed up, and he's not a pushy salesman. It's not like he was aggressive, but people just built like the guy was just good. Like he gained people's trust. He was dependable. He showed up like, okay, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be here in this window time frame. So people could plan ahead. He would coach them like how to order and stuff. But just a good, situationally aware, competent person, intelligent. But someone like that would be like a great garbage person.
Yeah, but see, it's so easy to align those incentives because like the end of the day, that operating model is based on like how much can we
Volume.
sell out of this truck. So then we have an easy metric to like gauge performance.
Yeah.
Whereas like,
Garbage.
man, if you got like 30 garbage trucks going out, clearly you have a top 10% of drivers and a bottom like 50%.
Yeah.
So how in the world do you create a pay scale or a metric that like rewards the efficiency and deters the, the reckless habits, the dangerous.
Yeah.
There's just like, it's such a hard balance.
But the thing is, what I'm kind of getting at is like, if we had that answer, I think Ace would be that kind of company.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Where it's like, oh, great. We can get people that have a great balance of like, I don't want to say speed and fast, because you don't want people that are fast or speedy.
Right.
You want efficiency. You gain speed from efficiency. Because I know, like, some of my routes finished the fastest when people weren't putting trash on the ground and you got cart compliance. It's like, you don't need to be hammering the accelerator or the brake and just trying to go fast. Like, that speed will come. And then, like, if you could figure out, like, a pay scale or a method to compensate for that, that's when you get the candidates you want.
Yeah.
And some might try it and fail and whatever.
But the sad part is there is there's top tier drivers.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
There's
Yeah.
like average drivers, and I bet they get paid the same.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like the only way you're getting paid more in garbage is like your years of experience.
Well, no, sort of, depending on where you're at. But from what I saw, the way you get paid more as a garbage man is just how well you can stretch the clock.
Yeah.
You know,
I
so-
mean, at the end of the day, you're hourly.
yeah,
That's how many hours does it take you?
yeah. And we had that discussion before where no one really believes you can have a sustainable life at 40 hours of work anymore, and that's more of a cultural, social discussion. As far
You're
as
saying guys need 50 hours.
they need 50,
Yeah.
and they're in the mindset they have to have 50. Like even if you told,
See, I want the guy that can do 50 hours of work in 40 hours,
yeah,
and then whatever like that pay would come out to be 50.
Yeah.
We'll just pay him based on 40 hours.
or even like half the difference. You know,
Yeah.
like okay, you did 50 hours of work in 40 because you weren't stretching the clock, you weren't purposely driving slow. Let's just split the difference.
That's a hard needle to thread, though.
Super hard. No, I mean, it's
Well, there's two ways to do it. Like, so some guys do it salary, so you just pay a guy salary.
yeah, and that's
Right?
when they get down at 40.
That's when they get done in 36. Because
Yeah,
they're just screaming around town.
yeah, Doug.
And like every once in a while, you see your truck like go down a street, and you're like, "Whoa,
Yeah,
that truck's moving fast.
right.
Maybe we should have that guy turning in his hours."
Yeah,
And then it's like, okay, now you make the guy turn in hours. Well, all of a sudden now you drive, and well, my truck's been sitting at Casey's for an hour.
yeah. Gosh. And then you start becoming a manager of other people's time, and that's not your personality.
No,
You don't want to do that because now you're generating even more work onto you. Where it's like now you gotta commit time to like auditing like what this guy's doing every week
Yeah, I would take a guy that can manage himself probably above a lot of other.
and pay him more for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And even if they take breaks, take longer, which is
Yeah.
all completely fine to do. I think you would take that and just find somebody that can correctly run a route without
Ah.
issue.
I know they're out there. I just think they're hard to find.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that would enjoy this job, but like they just don't understand it, and there's the stigma around like, I don't want to be
Yeah.
a coach, man.
Oh, well, if I go back 20 years, talking to my 20-year-old self,
Like delivering fuel would not be a better job than picking up garbage to me.
no, I don't think so.
Like
Nah,
picking up garbage is a pretty good local driving job
yeah,
if you stick with it long enough and get good at it.
yeah, I think so.
I mean, Monday through Thursday, you wake up
Yeah.
early, you get done early.
Yeah,
I mean, the schedule's king.
yeah,
There's no better schedule out there.
yeah. If you're an introvert and you can get up in the morning, it's not a bad job to have.
I don't think so.
No. But I don't know. Like the ideal person we want, I think is just super.
Like the reason
rare
I
to
own
find.
a garbage company is because I actually don't mind doing the work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies I see where they got the labor that it takes to, have the company run. It's like, I want to do that labor. And if I want to do that labor, I don't think I'd want to own the company. Like,
Mm.
that's kind of like one of my things. If I'm going to own a company, I think I'm comfortable doing the job at hand.
Yeah.
And garbage is one of them where it's like, yeah, I own it, but I'm also comfortable going out and like doing the job at hand.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to risk going down too big of a tangent, on a macro level, but I think just on a societal level, everything would function a lot better if you had more smaller companies with intrinsically motivated people. Because like what I see culturally here versus the other companies I was at, it's like world of difference
Yeah.
as far as like outcomes and incentives. But how do you scale that? Like imagine if if Ace wanted to start franchising out, where it's like, oh, we did something pretty successfully here, so let's replicate it. It's like it requires like you can buy auto car trucks and new way bodies, what they call top of the line for the industry. But then you got to find those drivers too.
Man, scaling is all at the crux of staffing. I don't know who's scaling right now that can find staff to do it, but
Yeah, and it becomes diminishing returns because I was trying to use the description of like, maybe when you started the garbage company, you're making dollars, and then to scale, it's like you're adding more work for dimes and adding more work for nickels, and at some point it's like, dude, it's just not worth the squeeze.
yeah, I've talked to like different owners inside like the space of like owning garbage companies, and nobody's like, "Oh, I want to get bigger."
Yeah,
Everyone's like, I think I have enough. What I need to do is I need to focus on what I have
Yeah.
and just make better margins on what I have.
Yeah.
And
It's
just make my life as an owner easier. That's like the consensus I'm getting from like other owners inside the industry.
Do you think that's exclusive to garbage, or is that
No, I think it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Because like it's like I can't find
Farmers?
I can't find new staff.
Yeah.
I can't replace my old staff with new staff that can do what my old staff could do.
Yeah.
So instead of like chasing low-hanging fruit, the contract town that's an hour away, it's like let's just focus on what we have
Right.
and make what we have a better system. Easier for the guys, more efficient, more profitable.
I wonder if we could find out if like these companies that are big threes, the Republics, the management, the connections, GFLs, or any of these. I wonder if they're still growing or if some of them are starting to sell off more of their areas.
Oh, I think they're growing.
You think they're still growing?
I think there's a lot of small independent haulers that are selling to them because it's just getting that much more difficult all the time.
Yeah.
And how they staff, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea how they can, like, buy a garbage company and, like, staff it, but
that gets
they've
tricky.
got ways to do it.
Well, they keep some of their existing staff if they buy somebody, but then as soon as they implement, like, drug and alcohol testing policies, they lose some.
Yeah. Well, they're not buying a company without the due diligence of figuring out if all the drivers are, like, legal and capable drivers.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe.
if you want to sell a company to GFL, like, part of due diligence is, like,
Yeah.
they're going to be like, so is everybody licensed and qualified to drive these vehicles?
All right.
And if you sign a purchase agreement and you say yes,
And that's
they're gonna do due diligence on
There's-
that before they give you a check.
What they call that, like a clawback clause?
Yeah,
Something? Yeah.
no, they're not buying you if you're like fictitiously staffing with
Right.
like unqualified.
It's like, hey, I got 2,000 stops to sell you, and because I won't say who, but you'd know them. But it was this larger corporate company was looking at something further south, and it was so many hundreds or how many thousand customers that they purchased, and within the first week or two, a lot of them left and went to a random new startup company.
yeah,
And the suspicion was that the person selling was aware this other person they knew was going to start a garbage company and take all the locals. And he's like, well, I'll sell it and get a cash. And I don't know if there was a clawback. They had to have been a clawback.
well, if you sell, you always sign a non-compete, but
Yeah.
that's just you
For
yourself.
you yourself. But
Your
doesn't-
brother-in-law can,
But
you know,
a
go buy-
girlfriend
yeah.
or yeah. Jeez. Well, let me look at some of these other questions I had on here because we covered quite a bit of them. We really didn't. I feel like the podcast we did would be maybe cathartic for a lot of listeners. Maybe we didn't give them any answers. So
I don't
sorry,
know if we have the answers.
we don't have the answers, but at least we're telling people, hey, whatever problems you're having with staffing, that's universal.
Yeah,
Now it's just a question of like trying to figure out, like, I don't know. Like I don't think there is a good answer. It all depends on your personalities. Because, like I said, like
well, I think you just have to be patient and invest in the right people. And if it doesn't feel right, don't waste your time.
I would put money on that position. That's something I would commit to. Where it's just like, dude, find the Yankees. And that's not the best analogy because even the Yankees fell apart. Because they bought all skill, but they didn't buy a team.
Well, when you look at how expensive it is to find a new guy,
Yeah.
that makes you like reposition what you're paying your current people to.
And
Like when the staffing agency's like, oh, we're gonna need $15,000 for
Yeah.
somebody that will guarantee for 30 days.
yeah.
It's like, well, so how much should I be paying the guys that are like running this correctly right now?
Yeah. Yeah. And then trying to like be aware of because everyone, when they talk about cost or you talk about something expensive, a lot of people think of just like the checks and bills they're paying right now. But it's like, well, what about the opportunity loss or cost? So when you're hiring somebody and they don't pan out, it's like, how much time did you commit? And invest?
Crazy.
Wildly expensive. where it's like, that two or three.
You don't know what you have until you don't have it.
Exactly. Well, and then the thing is, like, if there's probably you could probably find examples where you gave a guy 2 or 3 weeks of training and be like, I would have just paid $2,000 just to not have that experience
Yeah.
and come out ahead.
Well, and I've always told, I've probably told it to Casey more than you, just because you like assumed the position pretty fast because you had so much direct experience.
Yeah.
I always told Casey, I'm like, dude, the more you can do and the easier you make it on me,
Yeah.
the more you're just twisting my arm to have to pay you more.
Oh, easily.
Which is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
So it's like, twist my arm, like,
Yeah.
do more, learn more, be
Yeah.
more efficient, and like, that's a two-way street.
Yeah.
But again, like a small little company can negotiate on wages like that, whereas, if you're at a corporation, like it's kind of hard to go in the corner office and be like, hey, I'm like 30% more efficient than like your average driver.
Yeah.
So I think I should be getting paid more. It's like, well, you're not.
But you come from a background, your education was in finance. So you're constantly thinking of like ins and outs and like hidden cost. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
just like really aware of it.
yeah, you don't look at things as strictly as a spreadsheet. You look at things as well as time spent or not spent. And you can recognize value in that. I think a lot of people are running garbage companies. They don't think that way. I gave you that example of a district manager at a location showing me this giant map on a wall and be like, oh, we got like 35% market share. Look at this big area. This map represents our entire service area. We have 35% of the customers. So we got great market share. I was like, yeah, market share is a fun word to say. I don't know if that's what you and your other upper management guys use. But from my farm background, I was like, a lot of this shit is a waste of time. Because like I was friends with a guy, Roger is his name. I was friends with a guy that ran some of the rural stops in between some of these towns. And he was happy about his market share. I'm like, but you're charging like $30 a month for some of these farm stops. And Roger is like driving 60 miles per hour in between all these farms on gravel roads. And the shop guy's trying to figure out why he's replacing 6-month brakes every 30 days. And it's like you're losing money every time you go to these stops.
Yeah,
But
it's really a pretty simple operating model.
It should be, but like I said, this was like an upper management guy talking about
Like
how great.
the most direct, like in college, so I did finance and accounting. The most directly like applicable class for like what the operating model of a garbage company is cost accounting based on like models.
How
It's like you would always have these like scenarios where you got like a factory and you've got fixed costs, you got variable costs, and you've got like your potential output. So like how many orders are coming in, what does it cost you to make it, and then how many are you able to sell? And it's like, well, we could scale and get our costs down, but do we have the market share to sell all these then?
right?
So it's like a balance of like that, but it's variable costs, it's fixed costs. It's like drivers, like a $30 driver to a $35 driver, that $5,
Yeah,
if he's 10% more efficient on I'll say $150 variable cost, that's $15.
yeah,
So you pay him $5 more and you're getting 15 more on the back end
yeah.
because he's that much more efficient. I mean, that's like the operating model you look at.
We almost need to make a graphic. Like, I think that's something like a lot of people, like what you just said, because I started piquing my interest because I never had those kind of classes. But like something like that, we almost could make like a 5 or 6 minute graphic video
Yeah.
explaining like, hey, here's how this is a model we applied to garbage. Because there's probably guys running small companies that are paying their dudes $25 an hour and saying, I don't know how you can afford to pay more.
Yeah, I don't understand how you can afford to like not have a top tier driver.
Yeah,
Because
right.
like I get it looks expensive for what you're paying them, but
Yeah.
if they are able to run at that peak
If
efficiency,
you get the
the
output.
greater operating model, like it's a
Yeah.
reward system.
If you get the output.
yeah.
Yeah. That's critical where
But again, you get guys like driving. I mean, there's just how do you align incentives? Because then it's like then you're hot routing around town to pick it up. Like
yeah. And that's I think garbage is perfect.
I've never found like great balance. I don't have the answer to that question.
I don't know. I don't know either. It is I mean it's a question that ever since I've been in garbage it's always been the question, but I've been of the mindset where it's like just pay more for top tier and I think a lot of your other problems get solved. Now, it requires a leap of faith. Because when I started here, I remember throwing the number out where you're like, well, what's it take to come over here? I'm like, well, it means I got to get rid of my benefits and I got to increase the commute. And it's a company that's never done automated. And this was several years ago where $30 an hour sounded like a lot. And I was like, $30. And like you agreed real quick. And I was like, oh shit. Like this could be a problem because that was too easy.
You always let the other person throw a number out.
I know.
First.
I know the rule. But I thought I would throw a number high enough where
What do you need to do that?
right. But
Sold.
But this was like early 2022, 2021. I don't
Yeah.
know when we had that first conversation. So it seemed like a lot.
That conversation was probably before like the whole like inflation thing
It was.
kicked in.
'Cause,
like
like,
it was just starting.
Yeah, because COVID was kind of like, where was COVID in late 21, early 22? Like, it was a weird, not like, I don't know. Like, the supply chain issue was maybe kind of a topic, but
It was like on the upward trajectory, but it wasn't like the mainstream. Like,
yeah.
oh
But no, the wage
expensive.
thing hadn't hit yet.
no,
Because at where I was at, I was still like below 25, I think. Yeah, I was. Because it was over $5 that I added to my hourly. Because I remember factoring in like what it would take for me to buy my own insurance.
but you
So-
came over and then we were able to do benefits.
Yeah, dude. But that's what I was going back to. What I was saying before is you solve a lot of problems when you get a top tier driver, and when you solve those problems, it enables solutions to other ones.
It was so embarrassing, like what we were paying, and then we didn't offer benefits.
Yeah. Do
And
you
then-
want to say
I mean it was low, but
it was low? It's like
that was another problem. Like I could never seriously hire a driver because it's like for what I'm paying,
Yeah.
I don't know who would do this job.
Yeah.
But now we've like solved that. We're on the other end where it's like
yeah,
I think we're paying pretty good for like what's being asked of the person.
yeah. I think we're at a good metric, and well, it's weird because I'm in an odd position since I'm making content and I get to collect some of the ad revenue. Now, some of it I use to buy more camera equipment.
Sure.
But it's like my incentive pay. So for me to talk about like some of these things that I got a skewed perspective because I don't think anyone in the country is in that position. I know there's other guys who drive garbage truck making content, but they're not getting like the viral views. And even I could afford to get more views to make it more interesting, but I don't know. That's a whole different conversation. That's entirely. So, like, I'm a bit of an outlier to talk about, like, my compensation. But, like, someone like Casey, Casey's got a good gig. And, from my experience, objectively looking at him, do a little bit of office, do a little bit of driving, and once work is done, like, he's a free man.
Yeah. Well, no, that's why. I mean, I think we've built like a pretty good little
Yeah.
little operation, which is why like I'm happy to like continue to run day to day in it.
Yeah. Then it's just a matter of, like,
'Cause it used to be way harder. We used to have to do a lot more work for less.
oh, dude. Well, yeah. Well, like I said, the hay analogy is always there. Like, what I do with hay now is
Yeah,
infinitely better.
but that's like progress and like the direction you should always be like
Yeah.
moving in.
And yeah. I don't know if I went through. Oh God, we covered a lot of these. I guess kind of talked about trainability, assessing if someone's trainable or what you're looking for. I had a page of notes talking about test driving a truck, but I also got video content on our socials.
The one that you
discussing-
demoed.
Yeah, the battle motors. Like if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, "Oh, what's his opinion on the new way?" I got 2 videos right now posted that are like 10 to 17 minutes where I talk exclusively about the new way arm, and another one where I just start driving the truck in the morning and give my first impressions. So that's the new way 3.0 Sidewinder on a battle motors. Those are on YouTube. I got to edit the other one where I speak exclusively about the truck. And, I'm not one of those gearheads that probably is the best at breaking down trucks. But the thing I do different is, and I'll say there's a lot of things I don't say with a lot of like confidence or pat my own back, but the one thing I do better than probably I've seen online anywhere else is drive a garbage truck and shoot video of the garbage truck. Like I won't ever say I'm the best garbage man in the country, far from it, but I'm probably the best garbage man that can edit videos about garbage trucks.
So you're proclaiming that you are in the continental United States
Yes.
the best garbage
Yes.
truck operator slash producer slash
Yes.
personality in a truck.
Not personality.
Not personality.
No.
Oh, embrace it. That's a personality.
Yeah. There's I've been meaning to make a reel.
Is it because of you or is it because of lack of competition?
A lack of competition. I made a spreadsheet of all these other people making garbage content, and there's probably at least 20, 25 people that drive garbage trucks and shoot some video about it. But as far as, composing shots and like kind of, I can usually visualize pretty well what I'm shooting, what it'll look like when I'm editing it. And that requires something different.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until,
So you looked at like the content I made when I took the 360 and you're
Exactly.
like, wow, this guy, he can't.
yeah, this is awful.
He
Like
can't
this
shoot
is
video.
Yeah, dude, yeah, and it's because it's I was selling electronics at Sears, and setting up a big screen TV entertainment space is like saying my ABCs. Like this is not a problem, and there are some people it was just like advanced physics. Like yeah, it's super. You just take the red wire, put it in the red slot. White wire goes to the white slot. HDMI goes here. And they're like, I have no idea. It's like, wow. Okay. So there's things that are intuitive to me
Yeah.
that, but then again, there's some things that does not make sense to me, but I'll pay someone else to figure it out. Or pass that responsibility to someone else. But yeah, as far as content goes, I would say, yeah, I'm pretty competitive in that space. Like if someone started posting next week really good garbage content, that's where I'd be like a little jealous and a little motivated.
Well, it'd maybe help though if you had more people like
Yeah.
making content.
It would be, it would force
different
innovation.
perspective.
Yeah, that's where I'd say it. Yeah, the positive spin, it would force innovation because not every once in a while I get lazy. I don't do anything creative for a week, just the same old, same old. And it's
Well, the
like,
whole making content thing came about because I knew so little. You came over, you knew so much, and then you had
Yeah.
to like explain everything to me. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow, if I have to explain it to this guy who, like,
yeah,
in my opinion, probably should be able to like infer a lot of this,
Yeah.
and he still doesn't know it.
yeah.
I think we should make videos and like show people.
And you know what? I'm gonna keep making videos where I tell people to bag and tie trash until I see every bit of trash bagged and tied. And guess what? It's been 2 years, and there's still a lot of loose trash out there.
I think that should be our motto: bag it, tie it.
Bag and tie,
Like if there's one like thing we could bring to like
the industry.
the industry is bag it, tie it.
Dude, I do know though, like I'll read comments every once in a while, and people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna start setting my cart this way," or
There,
"Oh,
you have no idea what the ripple like third and fourth order effects are of
Yeah.
people just seeing a few videos and they like just take the split second
yeah,
instead of just motorlessly throwing something out. They're like, oh, you know what? I need to like
I would."
pull these strings.
Mm-hmm.
I need to loop them over and put a little knot in there.
Wild idea.
And then when the wind blows 50 miles an hour, the cart gets knocked over. There's not an open trash bag blowing down the street.
Yeah.
It's tied up, sitting there,
It's easy to pick up and clean up.
easy to pick up.
I would like to think that there's garbage men out there who have had a slightly easier day because their customers saw shorts or reels that I
Yeah,
produced.
there's a level of awareness.
I think so. I think that'd be my contribution. So you are welcome. Do we leave it at that?
I think so.
We'll close on this. You're gonna go talk to someone that does ELDTs,
Yeah.
training for CDL drivers,
I
and
forget what it's called.
something
It's
like
like the
that.
exam you take before you can get your learner's permit.
Yeah, because the process of getting people CDLs has gotten more complicated through federal mandates. So we're going to hopefully speak to a professional that actually works in that space. And that conversation, I would hope, has got more value to some garbage
Sure.
company owners out there. And maybe this conversation would be a little therapeutic where you are not alone. So that's nice. Cool. Good?
Good. Yep.
Good. All right. Laters.